All right, so ChatGPT, it's everywhere these days, right? Need a poem written? Boom,
Yeah.
ChatGPT. Want to understand quantum physics? ChatGPT's got you covered. Heck, you can even ask it to write that awkward email to your boss.
Oh.
But here's the thing about all these shiny new AI tools. Sometimes there's a dark side, lurking beneath the surface. So today we're diving into a blog post by Harel Security Research, and it reveals a vulnerability, a security flaw, that could let someone hijack your ChatGPT account.
It's like building a high-tech house with all the bells and whistles, but forgetting to lock the front door. As AI becomes more powerful and integrated into our lives, security becomes absolutely critical.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The researcher who found this vulnerability used what they call a wildcard web cache deception technique. Honestly, it sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It does have a certain intrigue to it, doesn't it?
It really does.
In simple terms, it takes advantage of how websites store and deliver information to speed things up, which is usually a good thing. But like a lot of things on the internet, it can be exploited.
So how did this researcher even stumble upon this vulnerability? It's not like they woke up one morning and decided to hack ChatGPT, right?
Well, it all started with a simple observation. They noticed that when they used ChatGPT's share feature, the shared link didn't update in real time.
Hmm. So you share a link to a conversation, but the person you shared it with isn't seeing the most up-to-date version. That's weird.
Exactly, and that suggests the shared content was being cached. Think of it like a temporary snapshot being saved somewhere to make things load faster.
Gotcha. So the researcher dug a little deeper to confirm this caching theory and found something called a CF cache status, HIT header. Is that basically a big flashing sign saying, hey, we're caching here?
You got it. Caching itself isn't a bad thing. It's how websites load quickly and efficiently. But if it's not done carefully, it can create these little cracks, these vulnerabilities that a clever hacker can slip through.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this unfolds. So the researcher, knowing that caching is in play, finds something else a bit strange. They notice that anything under the share path, basically any link starting with that, was being cached regardless of the file extension.
And that's where the alarm bells start ringing.
Mm-hmm.
You see, websites typically only cache static content. Things like images, logos, style sheets, stuff that doesn't change very often. But caching dynamic content like information pulled from databases or API responses, well, that's a whole different ballgame.
Wait, but so caching something dynamic, something that's constantly changing, is dangerous. Why is that?
Think about it. If you cache sensitive data that's constantly updating, an attacker might be able to grab a cached version of that data before it changes again. It's like taking a picture of a moving target. You might capture something you shouldn't.
Ooh, okay. That makes sense. So this discovery sent our researcher down a rabbit hole, particularly because they had experience with something called web cache poisoning. From the sounds of it, it's a way to exploit vulnerabilities in, you guessed it, caching mechanisms.
Right. And this particular vulnerability they uncovered hinges on something called path traversal. Imagine you have a website with different folders like filing cabinets. Path traversal is like sneaking up the folder structure using special characters in the URL to access files that should be off limits.
So like using Calo to go up a level in a folder. I remember doing that back in my mischievous computer lab days.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. What made this vulnerability particularly dangerous was the way Cloudflare's CDN, their content delivery network, and ChatGPT's web server handled URL-encoded forward slashes.
Hold on. Let's back up for a second. CDN. URL encoding, for those of us who aren't web security gurus, can you break that down?
Sure. A CDN is like a network of super fast servers spread across the globe. They help websites load faster by storing copies of content closer to users. Imagine trying to download a huge file from across the world. It would take forever. CDNs make that process much smoother.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about this URL encoding business?
Think of URLs like addresses. They can't have spaces or special characters because that would mess things up. So those characters get encoded. A forward slash, which is used to navigate between folders, gets encoded as %2f. Now, the CDN Cloudflare, in this case, treated this encoded slash literally just as a bunch of characters. But ChatGPT's web server, well, it decoded it. It saw %2f and interpreted it as a command to go up a directory.
Wait, so we've got this disconnect. One system sees %COF as just characters, and the other sees it as an instruction. I'm sensing trouble brewing here.
You're absolutely right, and that difference, that tiny discrepancy, is what creates the vulnerability. The researcher figured out a way to craft a special URL that exploited this mismatch.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. Tell me more about this sneaky URL.
Let's break it down. It starts with a harmless https://chat.openai.com/share. Remember, we know anything under that share path gets cached.
Right, so anything after that is fair game for the CDN to store away.
Now comes the tricky part. 2f pull 2 to fentf session. Those prevent2f are our encoded forward slashes. The CDN sees them and just thinks, okay, just some characters moving on, but the web server decodes them, cscan, and thinks, aha, go up 2 directories.
Oh no, I see where this is going. Going up 2 directories from the share path probably leads to somewhere it shouldn't.
Exactly, and where does it land? AP-auth session, a super sensitive area containing the user's authentication token. This token is like the key to their entire account.
Whoa. So by tricking the CDN into caching the response from that sensitive endpoint, an attacker could essentially swipe the user's token.
Precisely. And with that token, they have complete access to the account, all the chats, potentially even billing information. It's like handing them the keys to the kingdom.
This is mind-blowing. It's amazing how something seemingly minor, like a difference in how systems interpret code, can create such a massive security hole.
It really highlights the importance of thinking about security at every level of development. Every little detail matters.
This is definitely a lot to digest. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to explore. What are the implications of this vulnerability? What does it mean for everyday ChatGPT users? And how can developers protect against these kinds of attacks? We'll dive into all of that and more next time.
You know, it's like that saying, the devil is in the details. This vulnerability really underscores how a tiny oversight can have huge consequences in the world of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. So let's paint a picture for our listener. If an attacker were to exploit this vulnerability, what exactly would that look like? How would they actually pull this account takeover off?
Okay, so imagine you get an email or a message with a link to a supposedly interesting ChatGPT conversation. You click it, eager to see what's so fascinating, but that link, it isn't what it seems. It's that cleverly crafted URL we talked about, the one that triggers the caching of your authentication token.
Okay, so I click the link, my token gets cached, and then what? What does the attacker do on their end?
Well, they then retrieve that cached token, which remember is like the key to your ChatGPT account with that key in hand. They can log in as you access all your conversations and potentially even mess with your settings.
Wait, so just by clicking a link, someone could have access to all my ChatGPT conversations. That's terrifying. I have some pretty sensitive stuff in there. Work-related chats, brainstorming ideas, even personal reflections.
That's why this type of vulnerability is so serious. It's not just about losing access to your account, it's about the potential exposure of your private information. And depending on what you use ChatGPT for, the stakes can be very high.
It really makes you think twice about clicking on links, even if they seem to come from a trusted source.
Exactly. Phishing attacks where attackers trick people into giving up sensitive information are becoming increasingly sophisticated. It's a constant cat and mouse game.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. What happened after the researcher discovered this vulnerability? Did they just, keep it to themselves and use it for evil?
Not at all. Ethical hackers and security researchers play a vital role in making the internet a safer place. They find these vulnerabilities and responsibly disclose them to the companies involved.
So they basically went to OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, and said, hey, you've got a bit of a problem here.
Precisely. And to OpenAI's credit, they took the report very seriously. They acknowledged the vulnerability, fixed it promptly, and even rewarded the researcher with a $6,500 bounty.
$6,500. That's amazing. So there's a financial incentive for finding these vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. Bug bounty programs are becoming increasingly common. Companies recognize that it's in their best interest to encourage security researchers to find and report vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by malicious actors. It's a win-win situation.
So problem solved, vulnerability patched it out. Everyone can breathe a sigh of relief.
Well, not quite. While fixing specific vulnerabilities is crucial, this particular case raises some broader questions about the security of web applications in general.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the bigger picture here? What should we be thinking about beyond this specific ChatGPT vulnerability?
This whole scenario highlights the challenges of securing web applications, especially in an age of increasingly complex architectures. We rely on CDNs, caching mechanisms, and all sorts of optimizations to make websites fast and efficient. But each of these components introduces potential points of failure, little cracks that attackers can exploit.
So it's not enough to just focus on building cool features and functionalities.
Yeah.
Security needs to be baked into the design process from the very beginning.
Exactly. And as we integrate AI more deeply into our lives, the stakes become even higher. We need to be thinking about security not just in terms of preventing data breaches, but also in terms of preventing the manipulation or misuse of these powerful AI systems.
When we first started talking about this, It all seemed very technical, like something only programmers need to worry about. But now I'm seeing how this impacts all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
who hasn't used ChatGPT or some other AI tool lately?
You're absolutely right. Cybersecurity is no longer just a technical issue, it's a societal issue. We all have a role to play in making the digital world a safer place.
So let's talk about that. What can developers do to protect against these types of attacks? Is there a magic bullet? A one-size-fits-all solution?
Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. It requires a multifaceted approach, a combination of technical solutions and a security-conscious mindset.
Okay, so walk us through it. What are some practical steps developers can take?
Well, for starters, they need to carefully validate user input. That means making sure that the data users are entering is what it's supposed to be and that it's not trying to sneak in any malicious code.
So basically preventing attackers from slipping in those tricky characters that can lead to path traversal attacks.
Exactly. Developers also need to implement robust caching rules, being very specific about what gets cached and for how long. They need to ensure that the CDN and the web server are on the same page when it comes to handling URL encoding, avoiding those discrepancies that can lead to vulnerabilities. And of course, thorough security testing is essential.
So it's not just about building things, it's about building things securely and then constantly checking for weaknesses,
So
right?
you got it. Security is an ongoing process, a continuous cycle of building, testing, and improving.
This is all really fascinating, but I'm curious, what can our listener, the everyday user of these AI tools do to protect themselves? Is there anything we can do beyond just being careful about clicking on links?
Absolutely. Awareness is key. Understanding that even the most sophisticated AI systems can have vulnerabilities is a good first step. Being cautious about the information you share, using strong passwords, enabling two-factor authentication, these are all basic but essential security practices.
So being mindful of our digital footprint, just like we are on social media. But in this case, it's not just about protecting our reputation, it's about protecting our data and our privacy.
Exactly. And staying informed about potential vulnerabilities and security best practices is always a good idea. There are tons of resources available online, and many security experts share their knowledge freely.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I'm starting to see the web in a whole new light,
Yeah.
like a complex ecosystem with both incredible potential and hidden dangers.
And that's the reality of the digital world we live in. It's a world full of possibilities, but it also requires us to be vigilant and proactive about our security.
Well said. I think we've given our listener a lot to ponder. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thought-provoking question I want to explore with you. This specific vulnerability targeted ChatGPT, but what are the broader implications for AI security in general? Could this type of attack be used against other AI systems? And what are the potential consequences if that were to happen? We'll tackle those questions and more after the break. You know, it's almost ironic. We're talking about AI, this incredibly powerful technology that's supposed to revolutionize everything, and yet it can be brought down by something as seemingly simple as a misplaced slash in a URL.
It is a good reminder that even the most sophisticated systems are only as strong as their weakest link. And in the world of cybersecurity, those weak links can pop up in the most unexpected places.
Okay, so before we went to that non-existent break, we're talking about the bigger picture here. This vulnerability affected ChatGPT, but what about other AI systems? Could they be vulnerable to similar attacks?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. The reality is that as AI systems become more complex and interconnected, the attack surface widens. What might seem like a minor flaw in one system could have cascading effects across an entire network.
So it's not just about protecting individual AI systems, it's about protecting the entire ecosystem.
Exactly. And that's a huge challenge. We're still in the early stages of understanding the security implications of AI. We're learning as we go, and attackers are constantly looking for new ways to exploit these systems.
Let's play devil's advocate for a moment.
Yeah.
Say an attacker manages to compromise an AI system. What's the worst that could happen? What are the potential consequences beyond just data theft?
Well, think about all the ways we're using AI today in healthcare, finance, transportation, even national security. Now imagine an attacker gaining control of those systems. They could manipulate data, disrupt critical infrastructure, even spread misinformation on a massive scale.
Okay, now that's a truly scary thought. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie where the robots turn against us. Except in this case, it's not robots. It's malicious code exploiting vulnerabilities in these complex systems.
And the more we rely on AI to make decisions, the higher the stakes become. We need to be thinking about security not just in terms of protecting data, but also in terms of protecting the integrity and reliability of these systems.
So what can we do about it? Is it all doom and gloom, or is there hope for a secure AI-powered future?
Well, I'm an optimist at heart, so I definitely believe there's hope. But it's going to take a concerted effort from everyone involved: developers, researchers, policymakers, even everyday users like you and me.
All right, let's break that down. What are some concrete steps we can take to build a more secure AI landscape?
From a development standpoint, it's about prioritizing security from the very beginning of the design process. Building in safeguards using robust encryption and constantly testing and updating systems to stay ahead of emerging threats.
So a proactive approach rather than a reactive one.
Exactly. And from a research perspective, it's about developing new techniques for detecting and mitigating AI-specific vulnerabilities, understanding how attackers might try to exploit these systems, and coming up with innovative solutions to stay one step ahead.
And what about policymakers? What role do they play in all of this?
They have a critical role in creating regulations and standards that promote AI security and responsible development. It's about finding the right balance between fostering innovation and ensuring that these powerful technologies are used safely and ethically.
And what about us, the everyday users? What can we do to contribute to a more secure AI-powered world?
Well, awareness is a powerful tool. The more we understand about the potential risks and vulnerabilities, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves. Being mindful of the information we share, practicing good password hygiene, and staying informed about the latest security threats. These are all small but significant steps we can take.
So it's about taking ownership of our digital security, just like we take ownership of our physical security.
Precisely. We wouldn't leave our homes unlocked, and we shouldn't leave our digital lives vulnerable either.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive. We've gone from a seemingly simple vulnerability in ChatGPT to a much broader discussion about the future of AI security. I think the key takeaway here is that while AI has incredible potential, it's not a magic bullet. It's a powerful tool that requires careful consideration, responsible development, and constant vigilance to ensure its benefits outweigh the risks. So to our listener, the next time you interact with an AI system, remember that even the smartest AI can have its weaknesses. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and as always, happy deep diving.